Hello, I'm not sure if I'm putting this at the beginning of this video that I just did or at the end. So I'm just going to say welcome, or we're carrying on from what I just posted. I'm going to say this is going to be the beginning, maybe an introduction into the video that I just did, because there is some light language in here, and so I have my beautiful whiteboard and artwork behind me. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome, and welcome back if you have. My intention with all these videos is to assist in raising the frequency and the vibration with one another and on Mother Earth. And a lot of the messages that have been coming through lately are, of course, oneness and kindness. And so I just went into flow a little bit in this video. And as I went into flow, there were certain words that came through that I found very interesting. So I'm going to touch briefly on those words because I do use a lot of plays on words. And then when I go back and I look them up, I see that there's a lot of double meanings with them. So to introduce a little of the message that came through along with some sharing of the energies, as I started to speak in this video, my throat locked up a little bit. And I recognized that there was a lot of clearing going on in the throat chakra. So I'm going to touch briefly on that in just a minute. Before I forget, I'm going to write down here, expression. Oh, I already wrote that down. Throat, solar plexus. So I started it felt unusual, and I recognized that my guides were wanting to clear for the collective a little bit on the throat. So with some of the message that came through was basically that we're being invited to, how are we responding to our environment? How are we responding to things that are happening in our environment? So I saw cotton candy, and essentially what they showed me was that the cotton candy that we're existing in, let's say our environment, for example, is being stirred up, is being churned up. Now I saw the cotton candy is pink, and so I saw this as multi-dimensional meanings. So from the higher perspective, I'm going to start there, we're getting a lot of help. We're getting a lot of feelings and emotions stirred up so that we can integrate those. A lot of circumstances, a lot of environmental influxes are happening that are stimulating our response. And the more help we are getting, the more we can see things from a higher perspective. And so we're integrating a lot of emotions right now. Things happen in our environment, and we're integrating that for the collective. So the words that came through were our ability to respond. Our responsibility is holding us back. So this is just for you or me. This is the collective. So there are many beings out there who are not responding from here. They're responding from power. They're responding from control, or they're responding from victim and being disempowered and lack of control. So there's two different things that are happening. So essentially I see that we're being stirred up by our higher selves, the ascension, the expansion that we're going through, and many beautiful things are coming in. On the flip side, right, the shadow aspect. Now, I mentioned in the video that we are in control and we are not being controlled. But from another perspective, there's shadow elements that are seeking to control. And for many years, we may have allowed that to happen. And I brought up this examples of discrimination in every form, whether it be race, sex, religion, parenting, schools, social, political, economic. I didn't really write economic here. This all ties in together, obviously. So we've had this huge shadow aspect that we, from one perspective, think have been controlling how things are churned up. We have that group that believes in, and we can call them the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever we want to refer to it. That is an aspect that we are in the process of clearing, but we are in the process of it. So that means that as this beautiful light comes in, this stuff starts to come up to greet it or stirs up. I use a lot of examples in my videos of someone who, or you're cooking a recipe and the fat bubbles to the surface. You have to skim it off the top in order to make the soup, after adding the ingredients. It has to alchemize, but the fat flavors the soup. So essentially, we wouldn't necessarily see what we don't want, right, unless we've seen it. So we know we don't want slavery. We know we don't want women to be mistreated. We know we don't want children to be mistreated. We know that we don't want to be lied to from our government, churches, leaders, okay? So we've now been shown all of that, okay? Sexual misery, we don't want that. We are being shown all of the things down here. This is the dark cotton candy, and it looks like this, but it's not. It's really shadowy, and it's been fluffed up, right, to cover up what's really going on underneath. So from one perspective, people might say, well, we've been controlled. We've been under the thumb of X, Y, or Z. And from one perspective, that is true. But from the perspective that my guidance team is offering through this video is that we aren't in that control anymore. It just feels like we are, or it seems like we are, because all of this is getting stirred up. So without going into blame of whose fault it is, or who's doing the stirring, or all of that, we're being invited to look at the fact that this is coming up and to greet it with compassion so that we can integrate those things. That doesn't mean going, oh, it's okay that you abused all of these children, and so we're just going to offer you, invite you into our home and put you right back where you were. That's not what we're talking about. What it is not perpetuating the cycle. So, not making excuses for it, but not perpetuating it by throwing out hate and vindication. So this is this energy, and this is this energy. So our ability to respond, our responsibility, is what it's all about. And so the message that came through was our ability to respond is basically blocking some of us. That was where the throat and the solar plexus come through in a little bit. So I did some clearing there because of all this stuff that we've dealt with, and the word that came through was environmental protocol. So they said, our ability to respond, and we've been based on this environmental protocol, which basically means, I'm going to go to that, the official procedure or system of rules of governing affairs of state or diplomatic occasions. So we've had all these laws, right, that are set up a certain way, and while they are, many of them, people think they're doing a good thing, they're actually creating more division. We see this in our politics, Republican versus Democrat, at each other's throats. You're wrong. No, you're wrong. And we're starting to see that there's got to be some type of medium, right? How are we responding with hate, judgment, control, victim, fear, and blame? Or are we responding with kindness, courage, compassion, generosity, right? So this would be lack, victim, lack, okay? And warmth. Or are we cold and no, I refuse to listen to your side, okay? But that protocol has been put into place. What I also found interesting about it was talking about a treaty. So it's talking about contracts, a settlement, an arrangement. So in the past, it's been one way, but we're being invited to come from and basically to say, look, let's call a truce. Let's sign a treaty. Let's start fresh. And now moving forward, not keep feeding all this old energy. This is 3D. This is 5D. This is low density. Not that dimensional is third dimensional, but moving on to that, this is dense, heavy energy. This is high, light energy. Less dense, more dense, okay? So again, we're being invited as light workers, right, to operate and to respond to our environment from here, not from here. Now, I put these feelings in the middle because sadness is a feeling, but hate is a little different than that. Anger is a feeling, but hate takes it to a different level. So I'm sure you guys can understand where I'm coming from. Fear of what the future, obviously is a feeling, like I feel fearful, but taking it into an extent and moving it into the need to control somebody because you're afraid of being controlled, right? Or taking fear into the victim. I'm afraid of everybody. That's who I am now because this happened to me. Therefore, I'm going to be fearful the rest of my life. I'm afraid of this politician. I'm afraid of this church. That's, again, above and beyond the emotion. That's taking it into, there's a word for it, but I'm not going to go there. The same thing with blame. I put fear down here as well, but that's when you take it to the next level. When you blame someone, that's taking it out of the emotion and putting it on to something else. So the emotion is what we're being invited to integrate. We're being invited to feel our emotions. We're being invited to feel fear, but then not blame someone else for our feeling. Now that's a whole other, perhaps go into that a little bit deeper. So we're being invited, instead of to blame someone, come from compassion and say, how can I help? How can I be of service? Not by starting an I hate so-and-so, whoever it might be here, in whatever format, Facebook page. That isn't doing anybody any good. That is only perpetuating this. It's only stirring the pot. So the question is, are we going to stir that cotton candy in pink, high vibration heart energy? Or are we going to stir it in shadow, in fear, in doubt, in worry, anxiety, right? Also, that comes down here, worry and anxiety are often created from not being up here in the heart and love, right? And being in a place of what's going to happen, ego. All right. That's another video. So protocol, we're being invited to come from the old rules, the old system of governing, and come into the new rules where we sign a treaty, where we do a pact or a deal with the heart, but not from these old contracts, vows, and entanglements, right? That we were connected to. We're being invited to disconnect from that. And as we branch out, so I mentioned in the video about we're churning and I see these fibers branching out. So let's say you're here, right? You're here, you're taking responsibility, and you start to branch this fiber down into here. I guess I need to use a different color. We'll use this blue color. So now you've got all these fibers coming out and they're locking into, let's say, here, and then this fiber locks into here. Good. And I love the fact that this started out really pretty and bright, and then as soon as I put it in with the black marker, it got dark. That's symbolic. So now we're hooking into these old, we're being invited not to hook into here because we're being offered a lot of new fibers and new frequencies with this new earth grid. And so if we can lighten up and branch out by staying in the place of compassion, warmth, and love for ourselves and being in a positive space of positive, holding, safe space to share with others, we're going to then tie into up here the crown, which is connected to source, right? So we're being invited to be the kings and queens of light that we came here to be, the emissaries. I'm getting like all this like in message and anyways. So be these bringers of light we are the royalty. Every being is royal. Every being is real. Are we going to behave like Napoleon? Hitler? They were leaders. Or are we going to behave like someone who is, Gandhi or, someone like that, right? From a different energy, not saying exactly how he did it, but from the heart, from compassion. He was a very big ho'oponopono. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. He was in peace. He didn't, it's not that we have to come from a place of hate and throw, daggers at people. We can do it from a different energy. Many people just aren't seeing how to do that. And so I shared a little bit in the video that it's about setting up these new systems and because it's leading by example. It's teaching your children love and kindness, not teaching, oh, honey, that person's a bad person and they're going to go to where. And they're going to, we're going to go, they're awful. When in reality, we may not fully be aware of what's going on behind the scenes, and that's judgment. Okay, instead it's saying, oh, honey, we don't agree with that. We choose to come from love and light. Why don't we do a poster that talks about peace and kindness and being kind to one another? Not, I hate whatever it might be, right? And that can be any of this. It can be bullying at school, which is a whole other ball of wax. We're seeing a lot of bullying. That's where this is coming from. It's churning this need to feel empowered because our power has been taken away by the environmental protocol that has been created in our old energy system in our past. And so our throats have been shut down. We haven't been allowed to speak how we really feel. But now we're seeing it come to the opposite end where people are speaking about everything that they feel, which is what it is, and they're spinning the opposite direction. So now they weren't able to talk at all. They've been shut down. So now people are coming out in anger and hostility, and that's another frequency that they're spinning. So we're being invited to recognize that and not feed into that. It's the same thing. It still fits into this category. That person might be right from a big perspective, but if they're not responding to that hate and judgment with, let's see where we can come from and not let this happen again, rather than this. I think many of us have realized that it's not about beating somebody up. It's not about war. It's not about spare the rod, spoil the child. Anybody heard that growing up in the Bible? I sure did. That's a whole other ball of wax. But my point is that was actually a play on words. The rod and the staff are something completely separate. Having said that, it's our interpretation. And we are being asked to be regal and stand in our sovereignty and not feed back into all this crap, all this shadow, and open up our throat and our solar plexus in the form of expression, but not expressing it through this. So we might be in our heart in this cotton candy, right? And then we go back into our root to express hate, judgment, and control. So then it kind of counteracts that beautiful expansion. It's okay to feel. We should be feeling sadness, anger, fear. I don't know if betrayal is really, I think betrayal is more of like broken heart and feeling of lack of self-worth, or that's even actually down here, because not feeling worthy is deeper. That comes from sadness, guilt. Anyways, so I wanted to touch briefly on that because I recognized when I was done with the video there was so much more to go into to be more specific. So we're going to do some opening on the throat in the middle of this video, the solar plexus, so that we can express not from, I'm so angry and I'm angry at the world and you're wrong and you're wrong and you're wrong and you're going to go to hell and you're going to do this, and you know what I'm saying? Because then that turns into more of more imprinting. We're imprinting certain behaviors back into this grid, and then before we know it, this starts to come up and you can't see the light anymore. So we got a lot of help right now. Let's plug into that. I also wanted to bring up the fact on sovereignty. I feel like I'm missing one thing, environmental protocol. If let's say from a lower dimensional perspective, if someone is churning You know, we got the higher energies that are churning up here. We got the lower energies that are churning in here in opposite directions. So we can feel that this stuff is being churned up. We can see it's being churned up in all the scandals with the school and all the stuff we're seeing with the environment, in parenting, you know, kids that are being not treated properly, animal abuse, the economic aspect of it, the social media, bullying, all of this is being churned up. We can't meet it with more. I mean, we can if we want to go backwards, right? Which we're really not going backwards, but you get where I'm saying with this. So what happens is this just creates more of this. It perpetuates. So feel your emotions, express yourself. I don't feel, that doesn't resonate with me. That doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel good. I prefer to do it this way, you know. Not feeding back into that field, you know, and not being afraid to express ourselves. We can express ourselves by forming together as a community and in oneness and light and love, and changing our old environmental protocol on all of this platforms and creating new platforms in which to operate from here. And it can be in our corporations, it can be in our parents, it can be in our schools, it can be in our churches, you know, starting there and branching out, reaching our fibers up to connect through our crown with source energy, and then allowing ourselves to express through the heart more of who we truly are and not what we aren't. So also I touched briefly on Dixie. The old Dixie song came up, and it was Old Times Are Not Forgotten, right? Old times are not forgotten. Look away, Dixieland. So talking about, oh, I wish I was in Dixie. I wish things used to. So that's something I didn't really touch on. But again, it's not living in the past, right? We know things happened. We're aware that things happened, and we're really aware of it now. So let's come together and not keep living in the past. Let's not keep doing and perpetuating. We might feel like we're doing a good deed by bringing awareness to the past, the old United States, the old Dixie. But what happened was we had the Civil War, which was very important, right, in our history. However, are we going to have Republican versus Democratic? There's certain things that are right about both sides. So why would we kill each other over that? It's time to stand in our sovereignty and reign, the new reign, right? Regalness is to come from here. Not, you're wrong, you're right, I'm going to beat you. All right? That's old school. That's the old school, literally. Old school is kind of a fun term to use. I'm not saying it positive now. The old ways that we were taught in which we should behave and who we should be when we behave are no longer. So we're being invited not to look back at the old times of cotton, not to keep going backwards and pulling from those timelines and reattaching them to this before the shift, right? So anyways, in love and light, you guys, I hope you enjoy the light language that comes through. You probably don't even need to watch the video much after the light language. So if you want to, if you feel so inspired, everything I'm sharing is really from love and light, from a place of non-judgment. And I invite you guys just to be open-hearted, and thank you so much for being you. Namaste.